What's up, everybody? Welcome to GoJo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., Emerson Lazio holding it down for us in the DraftKings studio out there in Boston. We're brought to you by Wrangler, made for the ride of life. Save 15% on your first Wrangler.com order with promo code GOJO15. We got a fun show for you guys today. As always, download, subscribe, rate, review, do all the fun stuff. Leave us a 5-star rating. And check us out here live Monday through Friday, 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on DraftKingsNetwork.com, the DraftKings YouTube channel, Samsung TV Plus, Roku, all that good stuff. Brandon Stevens, cornerback for the Baltimore Ravens, going to join us heading into this weekend here. We got plenty to get to with college football bowl season getting started this weekend in earnest now. But my God in heaven, what the hell did we just watch last night? Dad, I did not think going into this NFL season, one that's been defined by defense, that we would have two teams go north of 60 points in beatdowns that made me feel like I was watching early season college football teams play FCS programs.
You know, and this is a year when we're talking about the defense more than the offense, right? Especially with so many backup quarterbacks playing that we'll get to as well. But you know how we always say, if you play long enough, something like this is going to happen. I ain't going to lie, nothing like this ever happened in my career. I don't think in your career either, where it was this much of a blowout. I mean, 42-0 at halftime, 49-0 before the Chargers even scored a point. And we've already had so much talk about Brandon Staley and his future, and we will again, unfortunately for him. But, I mean, one of the most amazing things I saw, there were 5 turnovers in this game, and every single one of them led to – actually, there were 5 turnovers. 3 led to offensive touchdowns. The other 2 were defensive touchdowns. Every turnover led to a touchdown, led to 35 points for the Raiders. It was amazing. The mistakes that the Chargers were making of fumbling, Raiders score, fumbling right away again. Then those last 2 scores were defensive touchdowns with a big man touchdown, a thick 6 that you had as well, Mike. But this is one of those, we've all had games, if you play long enough, where one gets away from you and you know you're not going to come back. But this score, much like when, Denver had 70 scored on them, is just one that, especially in the NFL, because you don't see it in the NFL, where you just kind of shake your head, and then you just have to get rid of this one. They still have, a few games to go. You got to put this thing aside. I wouldn't even watch this game. Put it aside and get ready for the next one.
Well, I mean, I feel like they're going to be putting it aside because they're going to have a new coaching staff by then. Like, we can't ignore this anymore. It can't persist. I understand the Chargers may have wanted to try and wait this thing out. You can't wait anymore. That team quit. Like, point blank period. We watched a team break on national television last night. The Raiders scored 0 points the week before, Dad. They played the Minnesota Vikings in a game that set offensive football back 200 years and scored 0 points in that game, and came out and scored 35 points, the most in any half since the previously mentioned 2010 Broncos game, where they led the Broncos 38-7 at halftime. And they became the first team since the 1950 Rams to have 8 different players score a touchdown. Antonio Pierce was downright mean. Jacoby Myers threw multiple passes in this game, including a touchdown. He scored on multiple trick plays in this game. You had defensive touchdowns left and right. They rubbed their nose in it, Dad. And you saw on that other side there, that Chargers team was done in the second quarter there. There is just no belief in what's going on there anymore in Los Angeles. And it's not because I don't like Brandon Staley. It's not because I don't think he might be successful somewhere else. But it's over in Los Angeles for him, and the Chargers need to make a change accordingly.
You talk about the Jacoby Myers pass for a touchdown. They were up 42-0 when he did that, and I'm still at the point of, hey, you know what? If you don't want that to happen to you, stop it. Because the Raiders certainly have had a ton of success, so they were enjoying this night, and more power to them. The amazing thing in this game is the Chargers had the ball longer than the Raiders. The Chargers had more drives than the Raiders, and they were only behind them maybe 50 yards in total offense. So if you looked at the stats are incredibly close But obviously it's those turnovers.
Look at Easton Stick's stat line alone. We talked about Easton Stick going into this game for the injured Justin Herbert. Easton Stick was 23 of 32 for 257 yards and 3 touchdowns. If you just close your eyes and look at that, it looks pretty damn good. But then you open your eyes and you see the rest of this and you realize that it all went to hell. And like, I am empathetic to the Chargers players, right? Your season had already been going bad. And then last week you get the announcement that your big money star quarterback is going to be out for the rest of the year. Dad, we've talked about this on the show plenty. You know better than most that hopeless feeling that sets in when all of a sudden the guy that's supposed to be your guy, you know you got one of the special ones, and now he's on the sideline, can't even hold a clipboard because his hand's all wrapped up here. You know there's a hopelessness that accompanies it, but rarely does it translate so clearly and so evidently to us in the crowd on the field.
Yeah, and then you have your backup here like, well, at least we have one of the top weapons in the league in Keenan out. Oh, no, we don't. He's not playing. So, I mean, but between Easton Stick and Aiden O'Connell, there were 7 touchdowns and 1 interception. Aiden O'Connell went 4-0, on touchdowns and interceptions. So the backups actually looked good from a throwing standpoint, statistical standpoint. The turnovers killed the Chargers. The Chargers have 3 more games. They play the Bills, the Broncos, and the Chiefs. Those are their last 3 games.
Lost.
Now, see what's on the line for the Chiefs. Again, that last game, teams may be locked in, so you don't know what's going to happen. But still, they could literally be like a double-digit underdog in every one of those games. Probably not the Broncos. We'll see what the Broncos do this week. But and you're right. As much as you want to kind of, you hate calling for somebody's job and this and that. He's going to be gone. It's just a matter of when. Is it going to be now? Do you do it now while you have these 3 games left? Do you wait till after the season? But not only, I'm sure, does he know, but every player, every other coach. This is one of those days, see, people go behind the curtain here when if you're an assistant coach, you start the feelers. You start to get stuff out there. This is now about self-preservation from a player standpoint, from an assistant coach's standpoint, about what your particular future is going to hold. And it's kind of been there for the Chargers anyway, but it really got, emphasized and stamped on and written down in ink last night. But this is what happens to teams like this who have coaching questions, personnel questions, and you're out of it, of how players and coaches go about their business the last few weeks of the season.
Yeah, it's everyone involved knows, and I think that's the exact right way to put it. And that's why I think you are getting close to needing to make a move now.
Yeah, to do it.
We don't like calling for anyone's job, but man, it's hard to expect everyone to continue to go about this way, walking around the building, taking the message seriously. A couple weeks ago, Brandon Staley said if the message wasn't getting home, we'd be getting blown out of the stadium here. And then it shows up here. So now you do start to wonder when things like this happen. And just the way it looked at, we all watched that last night. That was not a Chargers team that seemed to put up a fight for very long in that game. And so you wonder how hard it is for everybody to go walk around the building and go along with the charade when you know that everyone involved is not going to be here going forward. Brandon Staley last night, to his credit, I will say, went and did the halftime interview going in while they were getting blitzed and completely destroyed out there on the field, and composed himself there, and then stood and answered the questions after the game. This was Brandon Staley in the post game, facing up to the media, who had plenty of the questions you'd expect.
Do you expect to be the coach here tomorrow?
I don't know that.
Do you think you should be?
Yes.
Why?
I know that what I've done here for 3 years, and I know what I put into this, and I know that we're capable of going. I know the type of coach that I am. I believe in myself. But again, this isn't about me. This is about a group that's hurting in there. We got to get some rest, and we got to get ready for Buffalo.
And Dad, it's coming off a short week. Like he understands this locker room has been beat up all year long. Once again, the Chargers injury bug that predates Brandon Staley and is a part of the Chargers haunted house that is going to be factored into whoever is going to come and try and take this job eventually. All those things just piled up and got to a point now, Dad, where it seems like a very clear breaking point here. And we know primetime games always kind of exacerbate these feelings.
Without a doubt. And we had played the last couple of weeks some pressers from Staley, and he was salty like he just got out of the ocean and didn't wash off the salt water, right? And for this one, he washed off the salt water. There's no reason, no way for him to be salty after you get smoked like that. You got to just be, thank you, sir, may I have another? I'm going to take this butt whooping because that's what we got on the field, and I have to take it here. But it's also going to be the culmination. Remember this team was up, 27-0 on Jacksonville. Jacksonville makes that comeback. They go out and they sign J.C. Jackson for like over $80 million, and then they cut him after a year to the point where the GM Telesco goes in and apologizes to the DBs for that. I mean, just a horrific move there. During Staley's time, remember Staley is a defensive guy. During his time, I believe it was points per game, they've been 29th, yards per game, they've been 28th, and they've lost the most one-score games, 15 of them, in his tenure. So, I mean, when you're a specialty is one side of the ball, and that's where their weakness has been. The offense, I'm not going to lie, has been a bit of a head scratcher and underachieving as well. But he's a defensive guy, and defensively they have not been, except over the last couple of weeks, statistically, they've been better than what they were. But for the most part, it just hasn't happened, and that's it's just going to precipitate this change.
Yeah, you mentioned the former Patriot, J.C. Jackson there. 3 former Patriots scoring for the Raiders last night. Jack Jones, Jacoby Myers, Brandon Bolden. That will not happen next year for the Raiders against the Chargers when Bill Belichick is on the sideline for LA, guys. Mark my words.
I did see some of those Photoshops starting to make their way online. I can't think of a weirder fit than Bill Belichick wearing those Chargers powder blues. It just does not compute with his entire demeanor and then sunny Los Angeles and the most beautiful jerseys in professional sport. So, Dad, you're right. With Brandon Staley, the entire tenure, though, has been kind of a lightning rod, right? Year one, he was the fourth down guy. He was the analytics darling. He was the one that would give the big, long, really complex, well thought out answers to the media that everybody enjoyed. And then the second year, there was this real about face where all of a sudden he coached more like a defensive head coach. It was a lot more conservative decision making. It felt like, as people had evaluated or they had evaluated that, they had gone a different course with the way they were going to approach those situations, the lack of consistency with the approach, and ultimately a defense that really, since he got there, has struggled to stop the run and has all these big names. That's the other Chargers problem, Dad, is J.C. Jackson's sort of emblematic of the entire operation, right? You've got a ton of big names, but the production has never quite matched that, especially defensively. Khalil Mack last night, who had 6 sacks in the first meeting against the Ravens, got blanked for the majority of the night. They were, credit to them, focusing most of their attention on trying to stop and get him going, but it was as ugly a night in prime time as I can remember. I was texting our buddy Jason Fitz, who's on the winning side of this for the Raiders, and even he said, I can't remember a moment like this for my team. I'm numb to what's going on right now because, again, for the Raiders, you want to talk about the whiplash of the last couple of weeks for what they've gone through as a team, as an offense, and now going forward, springboarding off this. Dad, comparing this to the Denver Broncos' 70-point drubbing at the hands of the Miami Dolphins, it felt bad at the time, but man, at least for the Dolphins, you were in year one with Sean Payton. He wasn't going to be one of the coaches that got fired in year one. Right. You could say, hey, we've got a long season to go, and since you've seen that borne out. But for the Chargers right now, this happening as the calendar turns to December with a coach that you knew probably wasn't going to be there does have a decidedly different tenor to it.
Oh, no doubt about it, because Brandon Staley entered this season on the hot seat, so it just hasn't gotten any better. There wasn't, you always look to see is the arrow going up or not, and obviously it's not. Injuries are a part of that, but still the head coach ends up being responsible for everything. On the other side of that, Mike, I'm wondering, I believe Antonio Pierce is 3-3. How much is he putting himself into position to be the permanent coach? That one's going to be interesting to me. The players love him. Remember, it started out great, again, when he first got there. But like most things, kind of like even with a backup quarterback, it all levels off. And it's leveled off there, too. I like I said, I believe 3-3. They finish up with the Chiefs, the Colts, and the Broncos. So, tough sledding there as well.
Sure.
But I wonder what Antonio Pierce is doing for his chance at being the permanent head coach, which I think would just be fantastic.
Yeah, I agree with you there. My only thing is this, GoJo, sorry to cut you off. It's like, how many times have we been in this situation with the Raiders, right? They fire their main head coach, interim guy comes in, players rally around him, and then that interim head coach doesn't get an opportunity.
I think for Antonio Pierce, it's really more for me about springboarding to the rest of his NFL career, right? Because he's a position coach that took over as the interim head coach. And we talk about, in general, the value of these interim jobs, because I don't know if he's going to get the long-term job. I feel like the Raiders are going to be one of those teams fishing around for the Jim Harbaughs of the world this offseason, trying to make a splash hire, because they tend to want someone out there who's going to be a face of the franchise at that position. But I think for Antonio Pierce, invaluable experience that he can now carry into every other job interview for him. We know how difficult the road is for minority head coaches in the NFL, but maybe in a world where you combine this experience with the fact that he is a former player who did seem to endear himself to that locker room pretty quick, that there could be some opportunity there. So I don't know if he'll get the job with the Raiders, but I think he's positioned himself nicely with the example here. I mean, last year we saw the polar opposite version of this with everything that went on with Jeff Saturday, someone who came from the outside in as a former player, and it went bad after the first rattle out of the box against the Raiders. Here, it's been a way, way different story.
Yeah, Antonio Pierce has never been a D coordinator in the NFL. As a matter of fact, the Raiders is his first NFL job. He came out, and coached in high school for 3 years before he went to Arizona State, where he was at a myriad of positions there, including defensive coordinator, before he went to the Raiders in 2022 as a linebacker coach. So not only his first NFL job, but he wasn't the D coordinator, then gets elevated to head coach. But he's got it going pretty well. I agree with what you say with the Raiders and that franchise trying to make a bit of a splash. There's always this side of, do you try and make a splash, or do you go with what's working? Is the decision already made by Mark Davis, I wonder, that they're going to look for somebody else? Or is Antonio Pierce still being evaluated with 3 more games to go and maybe still has a chance? I'm sure Mark Davis would say publicly, he still has a chance and all that, but you wonder if the mind has already been made up on what they want to do.
You and I will say, Dad, and you brought up he had never been a defensive coordinator too. That actually should not matter a ton in this conversation, because what this is a good reminder of, and Dominique Foxworth has talked about this for years, and I think it's always worthwhile to bring up here, is we treat coaching with this pipeline idea that we always hear about, right? Pipeline's the word that always comes up for minority coaching candidates, talking about, hey, so many of the coaches that get named head coaches come from the offensive side of the ball, so you want this pipeline feeding towards there, when in actuality, the way that we structure this doesn't make any sense, because it's not like being a competent play caller all of a sudden makes you fit to lead an entire team full of people. It's a totally different skill set. And so all the things that Antonio Pierce appears to have done well in connecting with players, in managing situations, and in creating an environment in the locker room where you get the best out of your guys, those are all the far more valuable skills than, well, are you a great play caller? There are things about leading a side of the ball, leading in front of the room when you're the D coordinator or the OC, that might work their way in there and are certainly a part of that skill set. But I think too often we just say, all right, who's the hot play caller? Who's the great scheme guy on there? And ignore some of the other leadership things that have made guys like D'Amico Ryan successful in year one, guys like Sean McVay successful on the high end. We always hear about that with him. So that would be the big sell for Antonio Pierce, as well as he clearly has that gift in terms of his ability to command the room in a way that should not matter what his title was before that.
But if he never got this interim head coaching job, he would be in the line, because there's a line, right? If you're a coordinator, you're felt to be a better coach than the position coaches, right? You're given more responsibility. You're running that side of the ball. So there's a pecking order, just like third team, second team, first team on the field. Are you a linebacker coach or are you defensive coordinator? We know which one is higher on the totem pole, so it's thought of more as someone who is maybe prepared to make that next jump. I'm not saying that's right. I'm just saying this is what's going on now, or this is what has always been going on.
It's certainly what's gone on, but I think at least when you're third string on the depth chart, you're playing the same position when you get to the top. All of a sudden, when you move up from linebacker coach to D coordinator to head coach, the job description changes an awful lot, and we saw that go pretty south pretty quick last night.
right, you know what is going to help Chargers fans this morning, gentlemen? It's going to have that embarrassing loss last night sting a little less. Well, guess what? Shohei Ohtani, we got to see him in Dodgers threads for the first time yesterday. Introduced as an LA Dodger, the big welcome party for him in the media. Also, Tyler Glass now going out and grabbing him from Tampa Bay, baby. Following up that Ohtani deal with Glasnow from the Rays. I mean, they needed rotation help here because when healthy, you guys know this dude is fierce. But I'm still holding my breath because the Dodgers have, made 11 straight MLB postseasons, and they have come up empty in 10 of them. The one time they didn't, it was the Mickey Mouse title in the COVID year. Come on, man. But this tells me they're all in. They're all in.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it right now. I think, what was it, Taylor Swift, who said in that Time interview, I'm collecting Horcruxes, I'm gathering Infinity Stones, Gandalf's whispering in my ear. That's apparently how the Dodgers are also operating this offseason right now, pulling together all the parts. They're still in the Yamamoto sweepstakes, too. I saw Ohtani was sitting in on those meetings trying to pitch him. So, Dad, this appears to be one of those off seasons gathering up. And you know the feeling. We went through this with the Philadelphia Eagles that one year in the NFL, that team of destiny or whatever they called it, the Nnamdi Asomugha year where you had Vince Young over, like all the guys that had come together for that team. And that's now going to be it. The intensity is ratcheted up, and there is one goal and one directive for the Dodgers this year, and it's win the whole damn thing because nothing else will be even close to good enough at this rate.
Yeah, seriously, when you throw a $700 million deal in there and then get the help of the player and the way he restructured it, I mean, you have to be, right? I mean, that's what you made that move for Shohei for, even though he's not going to pitch this year. And now you help out, obviously, the rotation. What a hard-throwing rotation you're going to have. What was it, Bobby Miller led everybody in fastball velocity last year. I think Glasnow was 13th. So you got a couple of hard throwers there as well. And the Dodgers still have room to do more for those that still may not know. Remember, Shohei deferred $680 of his $700 million. He's only getting paid $2 million a year for the next 10 years, which helps out the Dodgers bring in more players, and they're not going to be done. No, I mean, if you're going the old if in for a penny, in for a pound, they need to be in for 10 pounds if you're doing this. Just throw it all up against the wall and see what sticks.
Yeah, and this one's going to stick. The negotiating window, like this deal was done with the idea that Glasnow is going to get an extension in mind, and it sounds like they expect to have that hammered out today. The window to start doing that was yesterday, and so we've got a clear big bad, which I always think is good for business, Dad. Like, I don't know about you. I think in sports in any given year, like college football this year was a prime example. We did not have, in terms of quality on the field, one team that you looked at and said, that's the goal. That's what you've got to beat. It wasn't like what we had with Alabama in prior years, Georgia in the last couple of seasons. Those two teams are both good. Alabama's in the playoff, but you didn't have one that was the final boss. You didn't have a UConn women's basketball team. You didn't have some undefeated juggernaut who was on the cusp of something generationally great, and it made the sport better and more interesting in some ways, and I think in other ways was challenging in terms of what the easy sell is. You got an easy sell if you're Major League Baseball. We talk all the time about this sport traditionally having a difficult time selling stars or pushing its product the way its other leagues do, coming off a season last year where the pitch clock was an overwhelming success, and you have a whole bunch of young name brand players now going forward. You got one of the biggest ones out of a situation where he was never in the postseason light, and now you got him with the Dodgers here, where it's not just going to be now, hey, Shohei, have fun going and playing your first postseason baseball as a major leaguer. No. You get there and you win the whole damn thing, or else now we're going to start to talk about you the way we talk about the other superstars in this country, which is not great if you don't perform.
Yeah, I mean, last year everybody kind of looked at Atlanta like that, right? Atlanta kind of, can they close the deal? This is a team. But you had 3 100-win teams, Baltimore, Atlanta, and the Dodgers, who all got dusted in the first round. And Atlanta and the Dodgers look like a team that should be that. Baltimore kind of like, wow, okay, look what they're doing. And they all got beat. And the most shocking one, I think, was Atlanta, that they got to be able to close the deal, and they didn't. Yeah, now all eyes from the beginning of this are on the Dodgers, was what they're doing. As we've all said, they're not done. They're going to have more moves because of the space Shohei has given them.
Yeah, the big question with them, like even after Ohtani, because we know he's not pitching next year, is like they needed rotation help. So that's what Glasnow gives them. But Glasnow has a, checkered health history here. We got to see if this guy can actually make more than 20 plus starts, which is why, and it's crazy, Gojo, we were just talking off camera, they're still in on Yamamoto here, this incoming Japanese ace. And they even had in their sales pitch meeting to Yamamoto, you know who was there? Shohei Ohtani. I mean, that adds another level of seriousness to that ball club. And it tells you how serious they are in their pursuit of this dude. Like, they're not done.
Nope, certainly not done. So, like we said, if you're one of the 4 Chargers fans who's also a Dodgers fan in Los Angeles this morning, you can at least smile a little bit wider because you know your baseball team has got your back out here, even if your football team might be letting you down a little bit right now. Or maybe you can go become a Rams fan because, man, I tell you what, that team across town, we're going to talk about them in a little bit down this home stretch of the season right now. That's a playoff ball club. I said at the beginning of the season when we were early on here, and then I had to slink back away from that take slowly because Matt Stafford got hurt and they started losing some games. But I am back now. I am all aboard the hashtag Ramley. And part of that, Dad, is because they are one of the only teams that actually has their starting quarterback at this point now. We talked about this some in the first segment. I want to pull up. We've got a graphic of potentially every backup quarterback that's getting set to start this week. It is staggering right now. I mean, we've got teams on their 3rd and 4th quarterback potentially going into this weekend. Joe Flacco actually seems like a compelling option now. Like, think about this. We've lived long enough and churned through enough quarterbacks this season to where Joe Flacco's come in and won 1 game, and I'm like, oh, man, the Browns might be a playoff team now based on where he sits in this sea of guys that are, you know what, this year, Dad, I was thinking about this last night. You know how people always look at a major event in sports and they say, well, just trace this 9 months from now and we're going to have a bunch of babies named Timmy because Timmy so-and-so hit a home run in the World Series and all these fans. We're going to be able to, in like 9 years, look up and see a bunch of these names as guys that have been backup quarterbacks in the league for a decade because of this season, because guys went out there and put enough on wax to go and punch their backup quarterback card for the next decade. So congratulations to all them on making money.
Yeah, so true. It's who makes it and where do they end up. So it will be interesting to see, especially I'm so interested in a guy like Tommy DeVito. What happens to a guy like him? I mean, that with what's in front of him, with the money that's involved, and where does that go? And then, you go from that, a guy who we didn't expect, to a guy like Gardner Minshew, right? Who he was brought in for not precisely this reason, but to be a veteran kind of eye in the locker room with Anthony Richardson, the rookie, who was going to get the starter, but now everything is on his shoulders. They're sitting there in the playoff hunt right now in the 7th slot. Possibility of making the playoffs with a backup basically going the whole way. So you're running the complete gamut of going, who the hell is this to? Oh, yeah, this guy was productive in the league at times and now is a really secure backup and is doing well for a team.
I like the idea that with Tommy DeVito, we could eventually get to the point. Because remember with Cam Newton, where for so long, once he had gotten away, he was towards the backup side, the New England side of his career, Cam Newton and others said that, all right, well, he might be a guy teams are hesitant to bring in because he's such a big personality in the locker room and he would command so much attention. Right. I like the idea that we could get through Tommy DeVito mania and he could walk away with that same stigma. Like, I don't know if you can bring Tommy DeVito in to be your backup because every Italian person in your fan base is going to be out here throwing up the hand signal and throwing cutlets at you until you put their beloved son on the football field.
Talk about, we always say the most popular player is the backup quarterback. Man, would he be that, right? Between him and his family, I mean, they're as we said, just riding the wave right now. Plus, Cam Newton would just come in and call him, a system quarterback anyway.
Dude, his family and friends tailgate included like 300 people. Like, I don't know, like when you guys were playing, what was the largest request you had for tickets? Like his is going to be hundreds deep.
Oh. it's got to be and like those cost players money.
Yeah.
Like people always need to remember that you don't get free tickets. Nope. Those cost money, and so it's coming out of Tommy DeVito's bank account every time that happens. I'm sure the family is taking care of him. I do wonder for him though, is there a higher concentration of Italian fans anywhere else in the country, or does he have to be the backup quarterback for the New York Giants?
Time to turn our attention now to the college game, everybody, with our Modelo College Football Weekend Preview brought to you by Modelo, the mark of a fighter. So we have some bowl games to discuss here in just a moment. But first, some news. Alabama quarterback Jalen Milroe making a big announcement on the Next Round show yesterday.
Do you feel comfortable announcing you're coming back next year? Right here on the Next Round. Alabama fans would love to hear this.
Yeah, I'm coming back for my senior year.
Oh, there we go.
Whoa.
Breaking news. Flash the lights.
Whoa.
Breaking news.
Look at that.
Jalen Milroe is coming back for his senior year.
You just gave Alabama fans an early Christmas gift with that one.
I want fun neon lights like that in our studio.
The Stugotz is so strong in those guys, too, by the way. They did that, and Dad, you're familiar with this after 2 decades in it, where you don't think a guy's actually going to give you something there, but you got to make the joke about it. He actually handed them manna from heaven on a plate. Did. What a win.
I mean, that is exactly what you do. You say, hey, go ahead and tell us this or that, you know. And you heard them laughing like, oh, he's not going to say anything. And then while he was trying to say it, they actually were stepping on him as he was trying to say, I'm going back. And they're like, wait, what? Okay. Hey, you heard it here first. And it's the right move for him for the next level.
Oh, yeah.
Right? He struggled early on, was thought of more as a runner than a passer, so he can work again next year, keep going under Tommy Recio, coordinator, make the passing game even better. He ended up with 23 touchdowns and just 6 interceptions, which is really good. But they ran the ball so much more than they passed it. They had that true freshman on the O-line, so he's going to have a year of experience as well. Proctor out at left tackle. you know they'll get better there, and he'll have another year season himself before going to the NFL. So this was from a standpoint of the NFL, it was the right move for him. And oh, by the way, Alabama's got to be so happy because of it.
Well, I was going to say, think about what a rarity this is in modern college football to have a guy who's been there multiple seasons now. Like Jalen Milroe will be coming back for his 4th season on campus for the Alabama Crimson Tide. And now we know last year he had a couple of games instead of Bryce Young when he got hurt and then took over as the full-time starter this year. But, Dad, we always talk about what a difficult prospect it is for coaches having to come in and tailor an offense 1 year to a guy that's coming over there. The Heisman Trophy winner in Jaden Daniels, similar situation at LSU where he got multiple seasons there, and now Jalen Milroe has been a homegrown product for Alabama and is no doubt going to walk into next season as one of the guys that's a front runner for the Heisman Trophy and on a team that's got a chance to win a college, like a very real chance, despite being a team that we all thought shouldn't have actually made it into the college football playoff, given the fact that Florida State had the resume that was better, that was more fit to this. Alabama's got a very real chance to win a national championship walking into all that with him.
Think of this, though. The 4 remaining teams, 2 quarterbacks will be gone and 2 are now coming back. Milroe's coming back and Quinn Ewers, it looks like. I know he hasn't made an announcement yet, but I believe is going to come back. Unless he has, I'm not sure. But he's coming back in Texas, while Penix will be gone and J.J. McCarthy will be gone. So you have 2 coming back. So that is huge for them. And how about quickly another sleek move by Nick Saban. Nick Saban hiring a former Michigan coach right now before they play them in the bowl game in the semifinals. George, I believe it's Hilo. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. He was a linebacker coach in 21 and 22 for Michigan, and under Harbaugh. So I mean, very recently, he was done after that season because they brought back Chris Partridge, who was with Michigan and went to Ole Miss and then came back as a linebacker coach. So that's why Hilo wasn't brought back. But that's what a Nick Saban move that is, right? Bring in a Michigan coach who has been under Harbaugh and bring him in a couple of weeks before we're going to play in this game.
Very Belichick.
You can already hear Michigan fans going, see, anytime someone brings up the sign stealing stuff for them, they're going to be like, well, look what Alabama did. They're going here and trying to mine that from our old coach, which is a heady play. He won't be one of the assistants. He's going to be one of the million analysts on the Saban-led Alabama staff, and round we go. So, the gamesmanship has already started, but again, good news for fans of the Tide who, once again, listen, they're going to lose plenty of quality guys on the defensive side of the ball. Dallas Turner is going to be a super high draft pick. That's what they're used to year over year, but the biggest unknown on the Alabama roster this year was at quarterback, and now they've got that question answered going into next season already in a way that's got to be huge for them. So we'll have plenty of time to get to Alabama and the Final Four and all those games coming up, but Emerson, we got real live bowl game action getting started this weekend. The first wave of, I don't know if it's still Capital One bowl season or who else is sponsoring it now, but it feels good to have, even though in this day and age all we're going to talk about is who's not playing in these games. I'm still happy to have them back in my life this week.
41 bowl games kicking off tomorrow. 6 games tomorrow, a handful of bowl games just for the entire weekend, including your backyard, GoJo, the Starco Brands LA Bowl, hosted by none other than Gronk. Yeah, Gronk gets his own bowl game. That's right, baby. Are you on the guest VIP list?
I actually was invited. I don't know if I'm going to be able to make it to the game or not, which I love this turn, by the way. There's a bunch of things I love about this. Rob Gronkowski's obviously made the media turn now. We see him on, was he CBS or Fox, one of those pregame shows on the weekends, the Fox pregame show. But, Dad, he's now also gotten into the hosting scene. Like, Gronk Beach has become a staple party during Super Bowl week now. Big for him, kind of getting in that Shaq vein. But also, he's branching out. Did you see Gronk said on the Dan Patrick Show the other day that he is actually going to be singing the Star Spangled Banner alongside the New Directions Veteran Choir? So those military banking commercials that Gronk has been a part of apparently now have formed the perfect union between him and military personnel going out here to sing.
What a smart move, though, singing it with a choir, right? I mean, so he's not going to be alone. You know, he's not going to be hanging out where everybody in the world will judge him. Remember, he's not a singer, yet he's going to do that. But do it with people that can sing. Just kind of blend in with them, make yourself look good, and get off the stage.
Like, is this going to be Fergie?
There's no way he gets all the words right?
No, but that's why you have a choir to back you up.
He says he's been practicing. Learning the words and everything, but it's Gronk, so we never know. Hey, if nothing else, man, Milli Vanilli the thing, lip sync it. You know? I mean, the choir's up there singing, let them do their thing.
Just don't Fergie it. Do not Fergie the thing.
Yes, I could say, Gronk, please don't pull a Fergie. Well, actually, you know what? For our sake, please do pull a Fergie. Because if anyone can navigate that, it's great content for us. And Gronk doesn't get embarrassed by things.
No,
Why would
he doesn't.
Gronk get embarrassed?
Nope.
It's built into the model. Go out there and be you big, sweet man here. By the way, in that game, as we look at some of the slate coming up this weekend, Boise State and UCLA playing in that game right now. Boise State, your Mountain West Conference champions. Their star running back, Ashton Janty, I hope I'm pronouncing his name right, announced that he's coming back and is going to play in the bowl game there. Couple of opt-outs for UCLA, but Dad, UCLA 4-point favorites in this game. I actually like them and would pick them in that game. They're not going to have their star DN Liatu Latu, the Pac-12 Defensive Player of the Year, but you got the Murphy twins that are going to still be out there on that defensive group, and I think between that and actually Ethan Garber's their quarterback, who was the most productive of the three they played throughout the season, going to be there. I would probably take UCLA and the points in that game.
Yeah, Dante Moore, the freshman quarterback, threw himself some pick sixes and was gone, and that's why Garbers took over. Moore and now going to be out. I'm going to take Boise State in this one. Remember, UCLA also lost their defensive coordinator, who went to USC, by the way. They all go to the Big Ten. So pretty wild there. But I'm going to go the other way. I'm going to go with Boise State in this one.
They win the Mountain West after firing their coach too, 5 games prior. They've done a lot of this.
Spencer Danielson came in and was the interim, and he is now the full-time head coach.
I mean, that's ridiculously impressive, is it not?
Yeah.
It is incredibly impressive. We've also got the Myrtle Beach Bowl coming up this weekend, Georgia Southern and Ohio, the Cricket Celebration Bowl between Howard and Florida A&M, the New Orleans Bowl with Jacksonville State and Louisiana, the Avocados from Mexico Cure Bowl, my guy Chuck Martin and the Miami of Ohio Redhawks taking on App State in that game right now. I'd probably take App State, who's favored by 6.5. The Azlet New Mexico Bowl and the Radiance Technologies Independence Bowl, Cal and Texas Tech. Drink it all in. Go out there and take it through. I might have a parlay set up for you guys coming up here later in the day, so stay tuned on the DraftKings Sportsbook. We're crunching the numbers right now. We're getting ready to go, and we're going to sweat this thing out together, baby. It is bowl season, and we are back. All right, Brandon Stevens, kind enough to join us here from the Baltimore Ravens. And Brandon, first and foremost, congrats on all the success this season, both for you, for the team, and for your guys' defense. And I guess before I get into some of the stuff you guys have going on, matchup this week, things like that, I wanted to go big picture with you here just because I don't know if you saw the NFL had the league meetings where they were discussing some rule changes on certain elements around the league. And one of the things they brought up was the hip drop tackle as it's been talked about now. I'm curious for your perspective as a defensive player who also is on a team that's been affected by this particular play with Mark Andrews being injured earlier this season on this, how you felt about the idea of this game tackle being taken out of the game.
Yeah, obviously, that kind of tackle has been a concern for a while now. And it's just one of those things. It's tough, man. We're just trying to get a guy down by any means, and so that, it'll be. I personally feel like it'll be hard to take that out. It'll be interesting to see how that changes the way people play on defense, when it comes to those, side tackles, but yeah, we'll see.
Is that something that's taught? Is it a reaction? Like what is that in terms that are you conscious or guys on defense conscious when you're trying to take a guy down that way?
Yeah, like I said, man, it's you just trying to get a guy down, however possible, by any means, with no ill intent, behind it, I think those tackles are, just part of the game. I understand why they're trying to take it out. It's, been causing some, serious injuries, to offensive guys. But yeah.
Yeah, well, again, it's one of those things. As a former offensive player, I'm real empathetic towards the plight of guys on defense because there's just so much of the game now skewed towards the offensive side of the football. But certainly hasn't stopped you guys from having a ton of success this year. I'm curious. We've gotten to talk to on this show a couple of guys from your guys' defense over the course of the season. And I'm always fascinated how each position group kind of fits into this defense. So what is it that's unique maybe for a defensive back playing in the kind of defense that you guys do where you have so many moving parts and it seems like it's pretty complex from the outside looking in?
Yeah, playing in this secondary, we've got a lot of parts to this defense, and it takes a lot of communication, just being on the same page as the man next to you, be on the same page as a guy on the other side of the field, because it all works together. But we communicate, very well, trying to get on the same page each and every day, each and every week, and allowing it to go out there on Sundays and just play free.
You were drafted here, so you obviously haven't been in another defensive meeting room in the NFL level. But for you guys, this year has seemed to be another gear you found on this defense. What's the difference been in your mind from what you saw through your first couple seasons here?
Yeah, I think just clicking on all cylinders. Just and also putting in the work. During the off season, and it helps. That I play multiple positions. Knowing what the safety does, what the nickel does, what the dime does, because like I said, it all works together, and so I think that's allowed me to just play, faster, and trusting the man next to me.
How do you get yourself ready to play multiple positions like that? For people on the outside that see how difficult being in the NFL at all is when you're a guy that has to wear that many hats, how does that change the way you prepare?
Yeah, it's definitely not easy. It takes a lot of studying. Knowing, how they're trying to attack a certain player on the field, a certain position on the field. But, honestly, once you understand, what the next guy, responsibility is, it makes your job that much easier. You can, start to anticipate things and just play fast.
What's the actual hardest position then in the defensive back group? Since you've gotten to do all of them, what do you actually think is the most difficult?
Man, I've got a lot of respect for safeties, man. Our safeties, they got a lot on their plate. But man, corner, there's not too many people that can, go and play corner, But I would say safeties and corners for sure.
All right, there we go. You know what? You're right. Safety sometimes goes under-respected. The guys in the corner are out there on an island, but you got to communicate a lot and sort of be that quarterback of the defense on the back end at safety. Let's go on the field from last week first. You guys played in one of the best games of last weekend against the Rams, Matthew Stafford, and that offense, when they've been healthy, have really moved at an incredible clip. What did you guys take away from that matchup and going up against that group that you think can help you going forward?
Yeah, they threw a lot of concepts at us, schemed up concepts, and this league is a copycat league, and so it kind of helps to see how teams are trying to attack you because, I mean, we'll see those same concepts, weeks from now. So it's definitely helped us in that way.
Was there anything in particular that you guys saw, they're clearly trying to target this, that now you guys want to work on as a defense?
It was, sideline throws, a couple, throws, coming back to the field into, Stafford's vision. They make their hay off of, guys getting out leverage, to the flat, out leverage, vertically and whatnot. So, we knew that going into the game, and I think we did a pretty good job with that.
You mentioned Stafford there. I'm curious for you, and you mentioned all the different roles you play in the DB room, so maybe this differs by what you're doing in that given week. When you sit down and start digesting an opponent, you're looking at Jacksonville this weekend, who's got great skill players, a great quarterback. What do you start to look at first as a defensive back when you're preparing for an opposing offense?
Yeah, I break it down into, 5 different parts, but, I think first things first, what do they like to do first and second down? It starts with that. And then you go into, different formations, what do they like on third down, so on and so on. But yeah, I mean, the game starts with first and second down. So that's what I look at first.
When you're looking at an opposing receiver, then specifically with that position, what's the thing that you worry about the most when facing an opposing receiver? This week, bunch of different skill sets in this room for the Jaguars receiver group. What do you try and study there?
Yeah, I'm just studying, splits, what routes do they like from certain splits, certain formations, and, gotta have it plays, who's their go-to guy. What are they like running in those plays? They can always have a counter off of it, but you go into the play, with the idea, and you can just play from there.
So this week in particular, we've mentioned a couple of times you guys are playing the Jags, big time matchup in the AFC. What stands out to you about their offense in particular?
Yeah, man, they're a potent offense. They've got a bunch of guys that can make those splash plays. They've had some guys out that they should end up getting this week. We'll be excited if we see the fully loaded offense. But yeah, man, they're explosive. They got the quarterback that can make all the throws. So it's going to be on us to win our matchups, win our one-on-ones, and make more plays than them.
You guys are no stranger to seeing some great quarterback play, but also seeing quarterback play in practice. Lamar Jackson played an incredible game to finish off the weekend for you guys last weekend. What's he like in your mind when you've gone against him in practice, when you see him firing on all cylinders like that separates him from other quarterbacks in the league?
Yeah, man. I mean, Lamar, he's the heart and soul of the offense, of this team, and so just being able to compete with him, week in, week out, every day, seeing him make some crazy throws from crazy angles. I think that's what separates him, man. He can hit targets, off balance and in weird body positions and whatnot. And obviously with his legs, he can run, extend plays when plays break down and move the chains.
No, it's incredible to watch him, and certainly it's been incredible to watch your guys' defense all year. So, Brandon, we appreciate you giving us some time. We know it's a busy week in the lead up to this one. Congratulations on all the success, and hopefully we'll get to catch up with you again down the road.
Yes, sir. Appreciate you. Thanks for having me.
everybody. Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. I know I look like I'm on a bachelorette party in Nashville, but I promise you I'm in the studios here in Boston. So TGIF here, everyone. I forgot to put my socks on, or my shoes on, too.
Wait a minute. All right, so we're getting ready to do the Golic Acrostic, our NFL preview that we've done around here for weeks now.
Yeah.
And we're very excited. We get a different thing for each letter of the Golic name.
Yep.
We get a poem that goes along with it.
I have it.
We've convinced Emerson during the break to wear Jesse's hat. Normally Jesse's here. It's poetry time. She wears the basic white girl hat. And now you've walked over here without shoes on or without socks on, Emerson?
No. So I have my socks on, but they're the thick winter socks. So it's like I put these on. I was in a rush this morning. My shoes are off because these are thick enough to act as like shoes and keep my feet warm. And if I put my feet in shoes with these socks, again, in a rush, so these are the only socks I can find, my feet will get too moist and sweaty.
Yeah, I agree. I'm completely with you. I have socks like that as well, and I wear them alone all the time. Keep the tootsies warm. That's a good move out of you.
Thank you.
All right. What I will say is we need to make sure, Tom, our producer, we need to make sure that we clip that picture of Emerson showing off his feet. We had Jesse's feet make air last week on Twitter. We need to be an equal opportunity foot show. I know Mike Ryan over at the Lebitard show accused us of infringing on the Foot Girls franchise that wasn't with Lucy Roden and Jessica Smetana. We were just trying to support their mission. So now we're going to even it out and get male feet out into the marketplace here, mostly because I want to see if there's a viable space for it so I can start my OnlyFans.
Absolutely. I was just going to say, if anyone here would like to help me start my OnlyFans after this show, I'm totally down.
Do it.
I could use some Christmas cash. Okay, so here we go. Acrostic time. You guys ready? G is for the Bills throwing Dak through a table. O is for Belichick saving his job if he's able. L is what my Jags can't take if they want to keep pace. I is for a team that should get back into the playoff race. And C is for if Mullins and Jet can put up more than 3. And if you need advice on betting these games, definitely don't take it from me. All right, gentlemen, let's start with G. Get the tables, which, again, I'm married into a Buffalo family. Like, they're all very, very nervous about this Sunday afternoon hosting Dallas. We know Bills Mafia. They're fired up for it already, cautiously optimistic. What do you think here, Gojo? Will the table-smashing fans be happy come, like, 8 o'clock Sunday night?
I do think a union between Jags fans and Bills fans is kind of like perfect for some reason.
My household was miserable for a very long time, and then the Bills became decent. The Jags are decent now, and we're less miserable together, my wife and I.
I will say, as it pertains to this weekend, Dad, my initial read on this is that I don't think it happens for Buffalo going into this weekend. They're absolutely capable because as long as Josh Allen is in Super Saiyan Josh mode, they can do pretty much anything. He's that big of a difference maker. To use the Cam Newton parlance, he's a game changer. There is no doubting that for Josh Allen and what he's capable of in that offense. And if you look, weather looks like it's going to skew in what we think should be Buffalo's favor, right? 40s, kind of rainy, supposed to be a little bit on the colder side. We said that last year in the playoff game that they ended up losing to the Cincinnati Bengals, and so I hesitate to give them too much credit, but this Buffalo team's done a better job of living on the ground a little bit. My biggest concern is the fact that, Dad, they needed a lot, like a late game gaffe that we're going to talk about for a long time by Kadarius Toney last week to beat a Kansas City Chiefs team that's getting by more on the reputation of their quarterback than they are the actual quality of their team. This Dallas team right now is reaching their final form, and I just think barring some sort of disaster from Dallas, which is always possible, this is too complete a football team for Buffalo to take down at this juncture.
I would agree, and I think the weather doesn't really favor Buffalo, in my opinion, at all. You know, it's December in Buffalo. Now, if I saw 20 degrees and flurries, I'd think differently. But the low is 43, the high is 49. There's a chance of rain. That's fine. That's great football weather, quite honestly. So I don't really see an advantage either way on that one. And if the Cowboys are susceptible, they're susceptible on the road. They're 7-0 at home, and they're 3-3 on the road. But they're playing incredibly well right now, and that's tough to – you can't put that aside. And well, the Bills have lost 5 of their last 8. Do the Bills have the ability, playing their best, to beat Dallas, yes. But the Bills have been amazingly inconsistent this year. So it's difficult for me to think that they can do it. Diggs, their wide receiver, Stephon Diggs, is the record a reflection of our team? I don't think so, but it is the record. The only thing we can do is win the next game, win the next play. And that's the truth. They have been wildly inconsistent. Talent to win, but I don't think they can against this Cowboy team that is just on fire right now.
Well, I'd agree with him about the record point. Like with them and the Rams, they're not 500 football teams. They're better football teams than that.
Yes.
And that's what makes them dangerous. But in this spot, like even the 3-3 road record, it's because 2 of those games were against the Eagles and the 49ers. Like I hate when we do this too much with home and road splits because I want to know who you played. And outside of the Cardinals loss, an abject disaster, no excuse for that. But losing to the 49ers and the Eagles on the road in this year's NFC, and that Eagles game on the road, remember, they had a chance to win down the stretch. The final 2 minutes of that game were FUBAR, and anybody could have won that football game. So they were plays away from a season sweep of the Eagles, and that road record reflects that. So I look at where they're at now, Dad. The thing that still concerns me, because I think the Bills are playing a lot better football, is one, on the other side, it isn't Patrick Mahomes and the Pips. This is Dak Prescott and a Cowboys offense that between Ferguson at tight end, CeeDee Lamb, I know Brandon Cooks is a little bit sick this week. There might be a bug going around the Cowboys team right now. You've got that on one side, and on the other side, Josh Allen's still thrown an interception in 9 straight games.
Yes, he is.
And you've got a Dallas Cowboys defense that, especially with not Rasul Douglas,
Bland.
Yeah, Deron Bland, excuse me, on the other side, is a machine of turning interceptions into touchdowns. So dangerous combinations. I would rock with the Dallas Cowboys on this one. I'd assume you're in the same boat.
Yes, I'm definitely with the Cowboys in this one.
All right, perfect. Let us get to the O then here, Emerson, as we have got Bill Belichick moving on to Kansas City.
Yeah, baby. Life has come full circle here for Bill Belichick and the Patriots. Remember we're on to Cincinnati? Yeah, now he's dodging questions about his future here in New England. And yes, it sounds like he's on to Kansas City.
Do you have an understanding that Robert will not ask you to be back next year?
Yeah, I'm getting ready for Kansas City. That's what I'm doing. Yeah, I'm getting ready for Kansas City.
Have you and Robert discussed your future beyond this season?
Getting ready for Kansas City.
8-point home underdogs, baby.
I'm amazed he never breaks character. Like, at this point especially, I figured at some point, like, you could sneak a laugh in there and everyone would kind of understand it.
I am so looking forward to, if in fact it all falls into place, and we think it is, that he'll be done in New England, but he's going to coach somewhere else. We haven't heard an introductory press conference from Bill Belichick for a couple of decades, right? And so where he is right now, where he is progressed to in his post-game interviews, mostly all of his interviews, so I would suggest whatever team he ends up on, those reporters in the opening press conference ask him about lacrosse in the first couple of questions to loosen him up a little bit and get him in a good mood before they hit him with questions, because this will be the first time in a couple of decades, if he's with another team, he has an introductory press conference as the second oldest head coach in the NFL.
Yes,
so you go lacrosse, Navy football, and
special teams.
Reed.
No, you could ask him anything about a punter or a kicker, and he'll talk for 10 straight minutes.
Yeah, so I think you go with all of the tried and true Bill Belichick classics. Seeing young, charismatic Bill Belichick, by the way, in that Reggie White 30 for 30 on ESPN was also a nice trip on that. So maybe they'll get some more of that youth movement mixed in there. Dad, as far as doing it against Kansas City this weekend, I know we just talked about Buffalo and the quality of their win against Kansas City and what that might or might not mean at this point. I also want to make sure I don't go too far in blaspheming the Chiefs, just because at this point, this might be what their offense is. After week 14, expecting all of a sudden big demonstrative changes in the way they go about their business probably isn't going to happen. But the defense still stepped up and played really well when you look at what L'Jarius Sneed did last week to Stephon Diggs, holding him to real lows on the season, keeping Josh Allen under, I believe, 250 yards passing. They still are built to party. They're going up against a Patriots offense that's one of the worst in the NFL.
Yeah.
But there is always a chance with Bill Belichick's defense that you could get them in a position to cover. The Chiefs have had 8 games decided by 1 possession or fewer this season, including 4 of their last 5. So it is possible, but I'm also not going to deal with that because I don't think it's probable. Kansas City is still light years better than this Patriots team, even if they ran into a Bills landmine last week.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Kansas City's averaging 22.5 points a game. If they get to their average, New England's not beating them. So the defense, the New England defense is capable. They're a top 8 defense, top 3 against the run, a little further against the pass. And we know Kansas City hasn't been what they've normally been on the offensive side of the ball. This could be a chance for the Kansas City defense to get right again, right? They were dominant, and then they've slid off a little bit. And if you're not dominant against this really bad New England offense, you got issues. So this is a chance for that KC defense to just drop the absolute hammer on the offense, and it's all going to fall on New England defense. If they can keep them in the teens, to 2 scores, most likely 14, they may have a chance in this one. Do I give them a chance as far as a pick? No, I do not.
I mean, this is also going to be one of our first views of like a pissed off Patrick Mahomes. Like coming off last week, that's the first time I can remember seeing him, forget just the outburst towards the officials, in that game, palpable frustration. I can't imagine what the practice was like this week around Kansas City. And so I do think you're going to get their best foot forward for this week. And that's a dangerous combination for this version of the New England Patriots. So I think Kansas City goes ahead and runs away with that. Let's get to the LDAD. This is one of, I think, the sneaky best matchups of the weekend, mostly because I want to see what the Baltimore Ravens do for an encore. We've got Lawrence and Lamar going into this matchup in the AFC, where you got the Jags trying to hold on to the 1 seed in their own division. You've got the Ravens trying to keep pace with the 1 seed overall in the AFC right now. Dad, I think this is a great opportunity for Baltimore to display some consistency and I think flex back a part of their game that didn't necessarily have to show up to win them against the Rams. That rushing attack was not the star of the show in the second half, and I think they got a real opportunity to make it the star again against this Jags team.
Yeah, I completely agree. Jacksonville, I think they're going to win that division. We'll see. It's getting tough, but I think they will. But for them, that's not the key. The key is taking a next step forward. It was always, we're going to get to the playoffs, and how far can we go? For Baltimore now, that weight of the number 1 seed, right, where it's been Kansas City forever, winning the division, having the number 1 seed, Patrick Mahomes never having to go on the road for the playoffs. Now it's Baltimore, it's there for them, right? It's right there for them. Can they come through? They haven't been able to come through when they got into the playoffs, sometimes with Lamar, sometimes without Lamar. This, I think, is one of their best chances because I do think they're the most complete team in the AFC right now, the way they're playing. So, but the pressure, I think, is building on them. They are the team right now, and they can stay the team. Can they hold that course?
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting. Their defense also is what's going to give them a great chance here. When you look at Jacksonville this season, 0-3 against some of the other top defenses in the league. The loss to Cleveland, obviously, most recently. But San Francisco, Kansas City, they have not fared well. They failed to crack 300 yards of offense in any of those games. And this Baltimore defense that, Dad, if you can say one thing coming off last week that was maybe a bit of a negative for Baltimore is they got punched in the mouth a little bit up front by that Los Angeles Rams front. When you looked at their O-line and Kyron Williams, they were able to carve out a really strong living in the run game there. And so for Jacksonville, maybe that's something that you try and lean into in this one. But I don't know. I just look at the Jags defense, Dad. That's been the most stunning part of the last couple of weeks for me. You allowed a Bengals team that was second to last in the NFL in rush yards per game to go for 150 in that game, and then gave up 91 yards and 2 touchdowns last week to the Cleveland Browns tight end David Njoku. When I think of a team that I wouldn't want to face after giving up a ton of yards on the ground and giving up a bunch of yards to tight ends, it's probably the Baltimore Ravens, who have been far and away the best rushing team in football. And since the Mark Andrews injury, when you look at Isaiah Likely and what he's done in the last 2 games, 13 catches, 123 yards, and a touchdown. The bulk of his production coming as they still use a lot of 2 tight end sets with him as now the main featured player in that room.
Yeah, I just think they have it going right now. I like what they're doing. I like the direction they're going. I actually think they'll hang on to the number 1 seed. Maybe not so much because of what they do, but a lot because of what they do, but because of what the rest of the conference has kind of turned into. Nobody else has really stepped up to take control of that. They've had their chance. Miami, we thought, was there. Kansas City, we thought, has come back to do what they do. Never did we think anybody in the South, like Jacksonville, was going to take charge there. But the other teams that we thought could take charge just haven't.
So let's get to I now as we surge forward here on the preview. Is there a chance teams currently out of the playoff structure that have the best chance to get back in? Dad, you heard me say it before. I am all in on Rams propaganda at this point in time here. I think this team, when healthy, especially offensively, is one of the most potent units in the NFL. We've seen now, especially because they are much more solid along the offensive line this year. And I know they got a little dinged up in that last game, but it did not affect them all that much. I'm excited to see them. I think going forward, schedule-wise, I don't have it pulled up in front of me, but I remember looking the other day. They've got it's manageable enough until the end of the season. They play the Commanders, the Saints, the Giants, and then they finish up on the road at the 49ers. But you mentioned it earlier when we talk about the teams in the 1 seed race. Niners could have it locked up at that point. Who knows who's playing in that late season matchup? And even if they are playing, the 49ers and Rams played a real close one at the beginning of the season. That was one of the games that made me believe they could be a playoff team back then.
It will be interesting with them because right now in the 7 slot is Green Bay. The Rams are in the 8 slot, and the Packers beat the Rams, so they have the head-to-head as the tiebreaker there. So that's a hurdle they're going to have to get over. For me, Mike, it's Denver. I think it's the Broncos right now on the outside looking in. The Broncos are sitting in the 9th slot, and I think their competition is going to be the Bills, who are sitting in the 11th slot right now. The 10th slot is Cincinnati. I just don't think it's going to happen there. And the same thing I just said about the Rams, I'll say, about the Denver and Buffalo. Denver beat Buffalo in the regular season. So they have the tiebreaker there, should a tie for the wild card. And Denver's remaining schedule is Detroit, the game I'm looking forward to doing this week, New England, the Chargers, and Vegas. So it is definitely there for the Broncos to jump into the playoffs because I still think Pittsburgh's going to be the team that falls out.
That Broncos team, man, Sean Payton, Coach of the Year. We'll keep beating the drum as they keep going and ticking off wins here. Let's finish this off with the C as we get to Emerson. A look at Justin Jefferson, who will be on the field against the Cincinnati Bengals this weekend.
Yeah, indeed, and he had a few words to say about his playing status against Cincinnati.
I definitely broke down a little bit after they told me that I wasn't going to be able to go back into the game. This season has been tough for me, just with the hamstring injury, and then now with this, exiting the game early. So it's been tough, but, God got me. I'm blessed to be in this situation, so I just got to keep going, keep doing what I need to do, and, hopefully Saturday is I can give what everybody is expecting.
All right, if Jefferson can stay healthy here, Gojo, does that dynamic duo of Jet and Nick Mullins, is that enough to spark this Vikings offense here?
Boy, I just don't know if it moves the needle enough for me. Dad, looking at the Bengals on the other side here. Now, they've made a lot of their living being able to turn people over. They're number 2 in the NFL in turnover margin this season, and they've helped shut down some dynamic run games, but that's not what's going to win you football games against the Vikings, and certainly the Vikings defense good enough to hold their own. But, Dad, on your 4th quarterback of the year, I just don't know how much I can reasonably expect from that offense.
Well, that's what we don't know, right? We've seen quarterbacks come in and play great, and then level off or play great for a few games or lead their team well like a Tommy DeVito or start out great like a Josh Dobbs and then fall off to now being 3rd team. So I don't know what direction to go. All I know is the defense has to step more in place of this, and Justin Jefferson needs to be a big part of it. As remember, Minnesota's in the 6th slot right now, and they play all division games after this game. They play the Lions twice and Green Bay once. So it is there for them. There is no doubt about it. I think they get it done against Cincinnati.
Yeah, I've got my concerns. I think Jake Browning is getting comfortable on the sticks right now. I think you saw in the last couple games especially, big-time screen team, which could be huge for you against all this Minnesota Vikings pressure coming your way. And Vikings a little banged up on the offensive line. No Brian O'Neill out at right tackle, who's been a great player for them on one of the more underrated groups in football. So I'll take the Cincinnati Bengals to keep it rolling and keep their playoff hopes alive. Coming up next, we'll take a look at the student becoming the teacher in the NFL Sunday next.
Ahead of this weekend, lots and lots of talk about this Dan Campbell, Sean Payton connection before their teams collide here, guys. So Payton's known Dan Campbell for the better part, I'm reading here, 25 years. That would be a quarter of a century, and has watched and aided as Campbell went from third-round draft pick to longtime player to young assistant coach to becoming the top trusted lieutenant to now one of the most respected head coaches in the league. Here is Dan Campbell on his connection, on his friendship, his relationship with Sean Payton.
It means we better be on our stuff because he's going to come here to try to embarrass us. That's what it means. And so that's our motivation. That's my motivation. And it's about winning, man. All we got to do is find a way to win. And we're going to have to be at our best. And we will be at our best.
Yeah, Campbell saying earlier this week, he knows he's going to get the best from Payton, his longtime friend, and also that Broncos team, GoJo.
Yeah, Dad, this is the game you're calling right now, and you said this was number one on your line item was the student becoming the teacher this weekend, and one of the Saturday games, which I'm pumped about in general.
Yeah, Saturday night games. I'm very, very excited about that. Remember, Campbell played for Sean Payton when he was with the Giants and the Cowboys. Now, Payton was the OC there, but Campbell was a player on that team, and then also played under him when he was the head coach of the Saints. And Sean Payton had talked about, after Dan finished playing, trying to get Dan on his coaching staff, and he finally did. He coached, so he got Dan on his staff. Also, Aaron Glenn played as a player for Sean Payton as well, and then was on that staff as well. So Aaron Glenn, the defensive coordinator for the Detroit Lions right now. So, yeah, Dan Campbell, nothing in getting all the material for this week and looking at pressers and stuff, just nothing but the highest regard for Sean Payton and that long relationship. And that's what you see in the NFL is the coaching circle that goes on. Where does the relationship start? Where coaches coaching against one another, sometimes they were assistants, 2 decades ago at a certain place, and they kept the relationship going. In this case, it was player and coach, and then coach, underneath the head coach. So it's a great friendship as they get together until the kickoff. And then, listen, Denver is playing great right now. Their defense is playing off the rails right now. And Detroit, we can't they're struggling some. And let's look at, Goff has been one that has been struggling, especially under pressure. Mike, we just had our buddy Mina Kimes on talking about he's the worst in the NFL under pressure, where Dak, when I just did the Philly-Dallas game, Dak had been the only quarterback completing over 60% of his passes under pressure. Jared Goff is not doing that. So that's going to be the story for Denver, which loves you call them exotics, call them whatever you want. In this day and age of defenses, putting a lot of people up at the line to try and confuse the offensive lineman. I'm not going to sit there and use the big words that we all know on defense, but that's what they do. I mean, you hear analysts sometimes talking about all different coverages and this and that.
You don't know the big words?
I know the big words, but let's keep it simple, shall we? They put a lot of guys at the line moving around, and the offensive line isn't sure which 4 at times, or maybe 5, are coming or where they're coming from. And it's a confusion technique to try and get a free rusher, and that's been working well for Denver.
Denver, just in general, their defensive personnel and some of the guys they've gotten production out of late in the season along this defensive front here, and especially like sub packages, rushing guys there, Jonathan Cooper, Zach Allen, Baron Browning, like these dudes have shown up big time for them down the stretch of the season, and they're going up against a Lions offensive line that's been a little bit banged up. That right guard spot's been a tough spot for them in certain matchups. And then, Dad, defensively for Detroit, the Broncos' rushing attack has certainly been heavily featured, if not always the most productive, but Javonte Williams, a big, strong back. And this Detroit D-line without Aleem McNeil, a D tackle for them in the middle, has really kind of changed some of the math there. This is a group that outside of Aiden Hutchinson's really struggled to get pressure on opposing quarterbacks in recent weeks. And so those are all things I worry about with them too. We know the defense has been an issue, but now that the offense is starting to catch up there, you might just be hitting this Broncos team at the wrong time for them. So lots to worry about for them there, but should be a really compelling matchup. This is still a Detroit Lions team that I think is a playoff team. And they're getting to the point now, Dad, important stretch of the season, where they're going to be playing the rest of their season indoors right now. All these games for Detroit are going to be games where I believe, are they at home this week?
Yeah, Detroit is, yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm going to Detroit.
Yeah, they're at home this week. So I believe I saw last week was their last outdoor game until they get to the postseason. So at the very least, they're going to be on tracks that are a little bit more accommodating to them. Not as accommodating. Former Steelers great Ben Roethlisberger, who had some very spicy comments out there. Emerson, for the current state of this Pittsburgh Steelers franchise, he really put on the old player hater hat and let them have it here.
He really did. This game will also be indoors for those interested. They're at the Colts. Steelers are tomorrow at 4:30. So Ben Roethlisberger, I think you guys know this. Everyone watching probably knows this. He's been no stranger to criticizing his longtime team in retirement, and kind of went in on him after that Thursday night loss last week to New England on his podcast.
But I just feel like people aren't afraid to play the Pittsburgh Steelers anymore.
Not this year. Maybe not.
For whatever that is. Maybe the tradition of the Pittsburgh Steelers is done. Maybe it needs to be formed a new kind of way. I don't know.
There's your headline, guys. Yeah.
No, it really has become the headline, though. And, like, part of it is he's blaming coaching for killing this Steelers tradition, Gojo.
I do appreciate that in a day and age where we see so many former players now starting podcasts. We obviously just talked about Cam Newton sound from his labeling a bunch of quarterbacks game managers. a lot of them do like just big overarching takes. I feel like every time Ben Roethlisberger's podcast gets talked about, it's just because he's talking about the Pittsburgh Steelers. Like Ben Roethlisberger has truly zagged and gone to the heart of podcasting and gone hyper local with a lot of his analysis and criticism with the team that he well knows there. And Dad, it kind of did seem like he was taking shots at Mike Tomlin and what he's allowed this team to become, and really the offense, basically looking around and saying, where are the leaders on this offense? Who's the one that's going to hold them accountable for that side of the football there? Like, does Ben Roethlisberger want to coach in Pittsburgh? Is there something we don't know about his future?
You know, you've hit it just a time in Pittsburgh where you really don't have that veteran leadership, especially on the offensive side, right? Who are you looking at? Who's the guy? You know, you got a young quarterback, you got a young wide receiver, you got a young running back. You know, I remember it used to be guys on the O-line, you know, that when they had just such a stud O-line, but that's gone by the wayside as well. So I'm not sure where Ben is going here. We're just at a point where you had, I think, a bad relationship between quarterback and offensive coordinator, and that coordinator was gone in Matt Canada. So you're kind of reassessing there. But as far as a different personality, it's the same coach. It's the same coach who, by the way, for 18 years has never been below 500. It's the same coach who's been as respected as can be by anybody out there. You know, is he saying maybe the time is up there? Is that his way of saying that? Because as long as Tomlin is there, that his attitude to the Steeler attitude and way of thinking is going to be there. That's not going to change. So I'm not really sure where Ben was, which isn't the first time, not really sure knowing where Ben was going with it.
Yeah, I think I don't know, I get sort of meh about this stuff from former players where we just do a lot of like, well, it's not the way it was anymore. Well, no, bleep, because you're not there.
No,
like, they haven't figured out your replacement. And part of that was Ben Roethlisberger ended up hanging around a little bit too long. And the last few seasons where he was under center, a lot less than his normal self physically, were an abject disaster. And when you don't stick the dismount on your star quarterback on the back end, it can set franchises back a little bit. And that's the point the Pittsburgh Steelers are at right now. It's in large part because, for so long, they enjoyed the wealth of having a future Hall of Fame caliber quarterback under center for them and the difference that affords. And they're going through the growing pains on the other side of that. I don't know if anyone's ever questioned Mike Tomlin's leadership. You can maybe say the offensive coordinator hire wasn't inspired and set them back a little bit. But I don't know. I'm going to be the last one leaving the party, turning the lights off on Mike Tomlin and the Pittsburgh Steelers.
This seemed a little aggressive.
Could not agree more. But you're right, Mike, in the guise of former players going back and kind of dumping on their old team because it wasn't like the way it was is a little ridiculous.
Especially with Ben Roethlisberger, where I think he said at some point in this, he's like, I wasn't even one of the leaders on offense. He talked about other guys there. It's like, all right, well then, if you weren't one of the ones doing it, why are we talking about it? I don't know. Ben Roethlisberger got pretty spicy. Coming up next, we will too. Stick with us. Before we get to our Campbell's Chunky Spicy Picks of the Week, which I am very excited about here and am definitely going to nail this week. It's been a work in progress. I've been getting there, but I'm feeling good about this week. I did want to put a bow on the Ben Roethlisberger conversation, Dad, because I wanted to kind of check myself and make sure we weren't bordering on something that we've seen happen and watch happen with Cam Newton the other day. And I saw Cam post a response about this on his podcast to a lot of the criticism that started to get aimed at Cam Newton when he brought up this idea of game managers and game breakers and the quarterbacks in the NFL that he was discussing here. Like, Ben Roethlisberger is entitled to his opinion about the Pittsburgh Steelers as a guy who has been an integral part of that franchise. He swapped a lot of paint for a lot of years and understands the standard around that building. And I can understand why it means enough to him where you're always going to be a little bit more critical. Lord knows you and I both as Notre Dame football alums, I'm always going to be harder on them in certain situations than I think others are, because I love that place, because I appreciate that place, because it was important to me the way it is important to Ben. So even if I do disagree with Ben's assessment of it in terms of maybe Mike Tomlin's role, he is what he offered up there as an opinion was not super far off, where he said maybe that old Pittsburgh Steelers mentality of everyone being afraid of them is gone, and maybe it needs to be reformed new here. Like, you're always kind of changing identities. It's always going to be a different team in a different time here. So it might not be the most far-fetched thing in the world, but it did feel like it was a bit of a slight to Mike Tomlin and that current regime there, who are deserving of criticism in certain ways. There is no doubt, but I think I'm protective of Mike Tomlin for all the reasons that I think all can kind of be publicly, because of what he's been in the NFL for so long.
The biggest change you can make on a team is a quarterback, right? And you look at two teams as of late who have gone from guys who are going in the Hall of Fame, and Ben's going to go in the Hall of Fame someday, is even though his last, bit there wasn't very good, to restarting over again. Look at New England. They had the GOAT, and when he left, they kind of are starting over there. So you're starting over at the toughest position, and they've missed in New England, and they're still hoping they've hit in Pittsburgh. So that has a lot to do with it, because you have obviously some veterans, right? Especially on that defensive side. We talk about leaders. I was talking more about the offense. Who is it there? Defense, you have some surefire leaders there, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
With TJ Watt and
Cam Hayward.
Cam Hayward as well. Minkah Fitzpatrick. I don't worry about that side of the ball. And every now and then there's just an influx of new talent that has to kind of catch up to what it was. But we were used to what Pittsburgh was for so long with such excellent talent. At times there's going to be a turnover in it. And when there's a turnover in it, I'd rather look at it that way and say, okay, they're readjusting to their new form here, as opposed to saying, well, they've lost the Pittsburgh Steeler way. Nobody's scared of them anymore. I mean, every team at some point goes through a bit of a transition.
And teams are not afraid to play the Pittsburgh Steelers right now on offense.
He's right.
You certainly have that healthy fear for the defense, but he's absolutely right. There is nobody to hold them accountable on offense right now. I do think in this he's sort of underrating his own importance to that franchise for a long time, and just how difficult it is. I think we've seen, you're right, at a lot of these premier franchises that have enjoyed this long-standing success. We always talk about this with the Green Bay Packers. They have no idea how hard it is to actually find a quarterback, because they went 2 straight Hall of Famers. And now with Jordan Love, they seem to have hit on another guy who at least seems like he can be a productive NFL starter as the floor, and then the ceiling we still get to explore. And so for a lot of these franchises that have been halves for so long in certain areas, or have enjoyed consistency in the pillars of their organization like the Pittsburgh Steelers had, I think they underrate how difficult it is to live like the other half when all of a sudden you miss on one of those, or you have a couple of things, and a lot of things really like the Steelers did offensively. You mentioned the offensive line as an identity. So many of their key pieces changed all at once when Ben left. So didn't want to venture and border on to disrespect, because again, Ben's done a lot for the team in Pittsburgh. But it is a time of transition that franchise and a lot of franchises like them and like teams that had QBs like him haven't had to deal with much lately. All right, let's get spicy, Emerson. What do we got here? Emerson, we cannot hear you.
We cannot hear you, Emerson.
Did you go to the bathroom and turn off your mic pack?
No, my mic's been on. My mic has been on.
Emerson.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
First the shoes, now the bathroom trip. What are you doing?
Wow.
No, this aggression will not stand, man. The point I was trying to make is it's a key wild card battle tomorrow, okay? I'm trying to sound smart. Steelers 6 seed, Colts 7. But yes, we got to focus. We're shifting into soup mode right now. Time for this week's Chunky Spicy Picks, presented by Campbell's Chunky Soup that eats like a meal. So you need to head over to the DraftKings.com/chunky to play in this Sunday's free-to-play prediction pool for your shot at a bite of $5K in prizes. Let's go, Gojo. Start us off. Get spicy, please.
All right, I like this. DraftKings.com/chunky. That's a domain name after my own heart right there.
Love that.
Dad, my spicy pick for this weekend. Love this player. Love what he's been doing. You talked about the Denver Broncos before and the streak that they've been on here and the way they've been playing lately. One guy that I think has been a huge part of that, because the Broncos, this team, they want to play close to the vest. They want to play compelling defense. They want to, as Mina Kimes once famously said, let Russ make snacks, not let Russ full-blown cook. The one place he's been cooking is with Cortland Sutton as his sous chef right now. Denver's won 6 of their last 7 games. In 6 of their last 7 games, Cortland Sutton has at least one reception of 30 or more yards in those games. He's gone for over 50-plus yards receiving in each of their last 5 games right now. And as they get ready to face a Detroit Lions team that's 29th in drop-back success rate, I'm going to say the over-under 53.5 yards for Cortland Sutton this week. Cash in on the over on that one. I'm expecting more big plays. They're good for one a game where he can get the bulk of his yardage. When they load up, they use all that running with Javonte Williams to get Russell Wilson, who's been great at buying time in the pocket and is going to go up against the Detroit Lions pass rush that hasn't been getting home. I like the deep shot on play here. Cortland Sutton's been a machine.
Yeah, he has. He's one of only 3 players in the NFL to have at least 600 yards receiving and 10 touchdowns. So nice grouping there to be in the top 3 of that. I like that pick. I like what he's doing. Great complementary play to what the defense. Again, this defense since week 6 is 6-1 and have been giving up, I think, about 16 points a game. They've been absolutely on fire. So the team working very well hand in hand. My spicy player, I'm going to go to a tight end, and a tight end who didn't start the season, but a tight end who is going to be counted on right now, and that's Isaiah Likely of the Baltimore Ravens. So Mark Andrews had been the man for so many years, gets hurt a couple of games ago against Cincinnati. So he's been out for 2 games. Isaiah Likely started for 2 games. Going in to those 2 games that Isaiah Likely has started, he had 9 total receptions for the rest of the season. In these last 2 games, the last game, 7 targets, 5 receptions, and a touchdown in a win. Game before that, 6 targets, 4 receptions in a win. So he's had 9 receptions in the last 2 games as opposed to 9 in the entire season. And somebody needed to pick up the slack, obviously, when Andrews is gone. He's not Mark Andrews, but he's becoming a reliable option for Lamar Jackson to go along with Zay Flowers and Odell Beckham Jr. to have that tight end, because this had been such a tight end-centric offense with Andrews. And remember, they would have 2-3 tight ends on the field at times. Likely is stepping up and becoming a very nice option for Lamar Jackson. So I look for him to continue that.
I loved Isaiah Likely coming out of college, a proud Coastal Carolina Chanticleer. And he's kind of gotten to be more of that, H tight end, the guy off the ball, more of a pass catcher. He's a little bit lighter in the ass than a lot of these guys. Going along with Mark Andrews, I have so enjoyed, because the Baltimore Ravens, we were wondering, would they go to multiple wide receiver sets? Would they get more of those guys on the field? They've still done a lot of 2 tight end sets, and watching Isaiah Likely get escorted around the formation by Patrick Ricard has been a joy. Pat Ricard is one of my favorite players in the NFL, an absolute rhino in that tight end room, and so them as the odd couple moving around formation together is wonderful.
Yeah, the 300-pound H-back who occasionally they throw the ball. It's like throwing some food, into the lion's cage just to feed him.
Bigs.
But yeah, that's exactly right. But you're right about Likely. He's like a big wide receiver. He's 6'4", he's 235. He's not that 255, 265-pound tight end. He'll wall you on a block. He's not going to blow you off the line, but mainly he's going to be that receiver that you can split out as well. So I think he stepped in nicely given his opportunity now.
He's been incredible. He's a fun player to watch in a Baltimore offense that maybe they found something in the second half of that game last week and can consistently start to put it on tape from here on out. Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Time to finish off the show and the week the way we always do. This, that, and the third. 3 quick stories. They'll send you off into the weekend. As always, make sure you download, subscribe, rate, review us, leave us a 5-star rating, and you can try and check us out live Monday through Friday from 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern. Tell a friend, remind them that they can catch us live on the DraftKingsNetwork.com, DraftKings YouTube channel that you should go subscribe to, as well as Samsung TV Plus and Roku. But if you miss any of it, like our great guest, Brandon Stevens, the cornerback for the Ravens who joined us today, you can get that wherever you get your podcast or right available on the DraftKings YouTube channel under the GoJo and Golic playlist right after our show's done each and every day. We're going to get to a bull on the loose and a bunch of people in Idaho making a mistake after we class up the joint a little bit, because Emerson hasn't been wearing socks or shoes today. He's wolfing around the studio there. He needs help, and thankfully our friends at Wrangler, who we are brought to you by, are going to help him out with jean shirts and jackets made for the ride of life. You can be ready for cooler days and longer nights and styles that are going to keep you warm and comfortable while also moving, looking great, and feeling great no matter where you are. You can wear Wrangler jeans literally anywhere. Emerson can wear them at work. He can wear them out at night, going and playing a pickup game with his friends with a pocket hot dog, or at home watching the game on TV. They're that comfortable. They're that durable. And there's a Wrangler shirt for every occasion. I am wearing one right now. There's casual tees like this that are incredibly comfortable, incredibly breathable. You got the snap and button ups. You can layer them together for a little bit of both. And make sure you don't forget the iconic Wrangler jackets. When the weather starts to chill and you got to head outside, Emerson, Wrangler is going to keep you ready for anything. So add some Wrangler to your getup.
I was just going to say,
and jackets that look great, fit great, and move great. So you're always ready for whatever life throws at you. And you can save 15% on your first Wrangler.com order when you use promo code GOJO15. Wrangler for the ride of life. Guys, let's get to this. The ride of life in Idaho apparently was to go and sit and wait at an In-N-Out Burger. Idaho got their first In-N-Out Burger store in the state, and the visuals from this were horrifying. People spending upwards of 8 hours in line waiting for In-N-Out Burger. Guys, we've all been to them. I live on the West Coast now. Dad, you guys live in Arizona. We used to get this all the time as kids in Scottsdale. When I was at Notre Dame and we would go play road games out on the road at USC or Stanford, we'd always send GAs to go out there and get some for us at night in the hotel. I loved it. But nothing on earth is worth waiting in a line for this long, and certainly not In-N-Out Burger, that as I've gone on in my life, I've realized is pretty overrated in terms of the hype it receives relative to scenes like that.
And we disagree a bit on that. I love an In-N-Out Burger. Maybe from the hype it gets, I get what you're saying, might be a little overrated, but I love the burger. There is nothing outside of anything in my immediate family that I would have to wait for something. Would I wait in line for 8 hours? Not food, not a concert, not anything. My thought would be, especially if there were kids involved and you're taking kids there, you know what? This place is going to be open next week.
Yeah.
And they'll be serving the same burgers they're serving now. So we're going to wait until there's not an 8-hour wait. Emerson, nothing outside of immediate family am I waiting 8 hours for.
Nope. And if I had kids were like, I really want to go, I'd be like, dude, it doesn't open until like next week. There is nothing in the world. Even if my kid was like, it's the only thing I want in life, I'd say, that's too bad. You're going to wait another week. This is ridiculous.
Just lie to your kids.
Yes.
Like, that's the one thing I've seen through my friends who are parents is they've gotten really good at selectively lying to their kids. Like, I know friends that tell their kids that the characters on their favorite show that they want to watch are sleeping right now. So just tell them the burgers are sleeping, the cows didn't come home, because no one should be. Lines are one of my biggest hangups in life. Like, I go to the airport all the time and I see people waiting in these long ass lines at Starbucks or Dunkin'. I'm like, you can get coffee down the street here for for either the same price and much less line, or just don't go it. I'll forego something I need in the airport over waiting in a line that's over 10 people long at any juncture.
I love taking pictures at the airport of lines and sending them to Mike because I know he hates it so much. But lie to your kid about it if you have to. And anybody that says, oh my God, that's awful, show me a parent who hasn't lied to your kid and I'll show you a liar.
Yeah, absolutely. My sister lies to her kids all the time. I lie to them 100%. If you're not lying to your kids, you're not parenting right.
If you go to the Wendy's down the street in Idaho, you're going to get a burger that's at least comparable. I know some people might think that's slanderous, but I think it's true. Wendy's slings a really rock-solid burger, and you don't got to wait in some 8-hour drive-through line to get it. You're going to get a square deal, and you can get a Frosty there, which, spoiler alert, is better than any of the milkshakes that you're going to get in In-N-Out Burger. That I will stand on. The milkshake there is overrated. I rest my case. Let's get to that, guys. Emerson, big news in the Premier League here as we got a first coming up out there.
Yeah, people waiting 8 hours in line for a burger. We got to wait 8 more days here to see the first female referee take charge of an English Premier League match. That's Rebecca Welch. She will officiate Fulham's clash with Burnley on December 23rd. Just the latest landmark for this young lady as well, Gojo. An experienced referee. She made history in November as the first woman to be appointed a 4th official in the Premier League when she helped officiate Manchester United's victory over Fulham.
Shouldn't we be past this at this point?
Yeah, no.
I mean,
100%.
I mean, we've got women referees in the NFL, in the NBA, and also Sam Allison for Premier League will become the first black referee in 15 years in a December 26 match. I mean, what? Now, again, I don't know all the reasoning behind it. Has there not been any other African Americans that are referees? I highly doubt that. But now all of a sudden it's been 15 years since one has become a referee here in the Premier League. I mean, it seems ridiculous and it seems like we should be past it. But every now and then you watch the world news and you see, no, we're not past a lot of this stuff.
And you watch specifically some things that tend to go on in that sport in particular, and it does not always seem like the most accommodating or hospitable places for women or people of color. So you can understand why. Especially, I mean, we think officials get it bad over here. Like every once in a while, you got to get barked at by, you get to throw out Nikola Jokic over here for saying the F word at you. You got to hope people aren't going to burn down your house over there.
It's almost like, we're saying, why should it even be an issue? It's almost like, why would Rebecca or Sam want to do this, knowing how this sport can be toward, again, gender or color at times? That, man, it's been like, you obviously love to do it, and congrats for them for doing it, and let's hope it all goes smoothly.
I mean, in general, when we talk about officiating, it's like being the president, where I'm amazed anybody wants to sign up for this job, given what it entails now. Like, I don't know what the pay is, but can it be worth the unbelievable scrutiny, people knowing your name and vilifying you for everything that goes on? I mean, I'm surprised, and I know some leagues are dealing with it now, but I'm surprised there aren't more leagues with officiating problems in this day and age, because the juice doesn't seem worth the squeeze.
At least in those, they're getting, again, we don't know what they're getting paid, but they're getting paid, right? Where it's getting awful is high school and little league getting officials, because they get paid, about $1 a game. I mean, I know your brother Jake in Boston, they talk about high school football games. They have to shift the day and the time because referees have to double up on games because there's a shortage of referees, because those guys are barely making any money and they're getting torched by everybody in the world. You're right. It's like, why in the hell would you subject yourself to it for $5 a game?
I'm not sure, but again, we're thankful for the people that do, because the engine that we are all walking
That's
going.
Why you got to give them pocket hot dogs.
Speaking of engines, Emerson, let's get to a bull loose on the tracks in Newark. What the hell was going on in New Jersey?
So, like morning commuters, right? They're used to the occasional or sometimes frequent delay on their daily routes, whether it's like a mechanical issue, weather-related, or just pure volume. But yeah, train riders Thursday in New Jersey could blame their late arrivals on something more unusual. That's a loose bull. All right? This is Ricardo the Bull. By noon, he was taken into custody, and I just found this out like 2 minutes ago. Here's the best part. He woke up after he was taken into custody at an animal sanctuary after escaping the slaughterhouse, like in a mad dash down these New Jersey train tracks. So now, because he decided to be the brave bull and run off, he is now at an animal sanctuary, and he will not be the burger you have at In-N-Out after you wait 8 hours for it.
Let's go!
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
My brother, he Shawshanked it.
Yeah.
He Shawshanked his way out of there.
Climbing through a mile of crap.
What? What an awesome story that is. Oh, man. I hope he has a long, wonderful life in the sanctuary.
Yeah.
I do too, because I was very worried that video was going to end with him getting smoked by a train when I saw it yesterday. So thankfully, everything prevailed, and now he gets to live a long and illustrious life. We hope you do too.
Hell yeah,
if you
Ricardo.
take some time out of that life to download, subscribe, rate, review us, leave us a 5-star rating. Have an awesome weekend. We'll talk to you on Monday.